Another day. Actually a bright sunny day. It's really nice outside right now.
Yeah, it's warming up. Unlike Boston, where it was snowed a little bit.
Eesh, snow. Yikes. Not in April. Anyway. Hello and welcome to Fall Through, your source for deep conversations about technology, software, and computing. I'm your host, Kris Brando, also known as Scriptable, and on today's episode, we have Matt and Steve. It's a trio panel. So exciting. And we're going to talk about a whole bunch of stuff. We're going to start with talking about security vulnerabilities, supply chain problems. We seem to be having a lot of them. I read somewhere that security people are calling 2026 the year of the supply chain vulnerability. So we're going to talk about that for a bit because there's a lot of stuff going on there. And as always, we'll just let the conversation go where it goes. There will be supporter content per usual. If you're not a supporter, I don't know what you're waiting for. Head on over to fallthrough.fm/subscribe and sign up today. And if you're not following us on social media, give us a follow there. And if you're watching on YouTube, hit that like and subscribe button. It helps us out a lot. And with that, let's get into the show. Hello, viewer/listener. How are you doing today? It's a nice, bright, sunny day in New York. We're all awake because we're recording in the afternoon because we decided to not be crazy this time and record early in the morning when we're all half asleep. And yeah, I think this will actually be Matt's last episode before he becomes a father. So Matt, how are you doing? Is the anticipation like just getting at you now?
I'm ready. Yeah, I'm ready. Today's the actual, due date that they give you, even though due dates mean nothing with babies. So my last day of work is today officially, and yeah, I'm ready to do it. And I'm not tired because I napped, like I said. I napped for once. It felt so good. We should do this more often as humans.
Naps are good. I mean, that's a thing that like little kids do that people really need to do more. Adults need to do more.
I was gonna say, you're about to have a human that's very committed to the idea of naps in the near future. So
yeah. Her and I align very much on this, so it's gonna be a great time.
You'll be like that daddy-daughter, like just napping on the couch together. Yeah.
Oh heck yeah, yeah. My dogs are gonna be a little mad at me, but it's fine because usually they like to cuddle up. But life happens.
They'll soon find out that they have been bumped in the priority, and
Poor dogs.
They will react in some sort of way. Steve, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Super busy as always, but yeah, it's always a pleasure to talk to both of you. So I'm glad I got to catch Matt before it goes away.
Yeah. Although I'm sure I'll be able to call him back for some episodes in like a few weeks. Not like next week or the week after, but maybe once you've got the hang of data.
It's like I have a scheduled message just waiting to send you. Yeah. No worries at all.
It's like schedule for this date, send Matt. Hey, episode.
No, it's all good. We'll figure it out.
We shall figure it out. We do have other hosts, so hopefully they will come back and we can pick up that slack there. But we're not here to talk about the meta of Fall Through. We're here to talk about the supply chain and how vulnerable it is. There's been a number of notable supply chain vulnerabilities in the last couple of weeks. I mean, last couple of years, but in the last couple of weeks. A big one was the Axios NPM package that was hacked by, what was it, North Korea or something? That was like a kind of out of left field. But big ol' hack. They got a whole bunch of people's data from what I read. Not great. And Steve, you were telling us before we started recording that there's two other vulnerabilities. You want to like talk about those?
It's not really about the vulnerabilities. It's that there were some rumors a couple weeks ago that are finally public knowledge, which is there's a new Claude, as in like Claude Mythos, a new model, and it is not being released to the public yet because the security story with it is kind of scary. Ooh. So it ties into that whole topic in that sense, because I think especially related to some of the ways that people are thinking about supply chain security, tooling like this is playing into part of that. And so, yeah.
Okay. Do you want to explain what is the security, like what is
Mythos?
All right.
Well, yeah.
Okay.
What is this thing?
So here's a timeline of events that I have constructed, but like happened. Okay. So a couple months ago, Claude's head of security basically was like, I am retiring. I have seen the abyss. I'm going to put down my computer and go write poetry. And everyone was like, that's kind of weird. About 5 or 6 months ago, there was a security conference that the talks came out a week or so ago where one of the people from Anthropic, who is a well-known security researcher, he has made millions of dollars off of bug bounties. He has something like 64,000 reverse citations on Google Scholar. Like he is like a serious person. Basically was like, Claude is a better security researcher than I am, and we've got to start like thinking about this as like a problem. And he like demoed like Claude finding 0 days in Linux kernel and stuff like that. And so that was kind of a little intense. And then a blog post from Anthropic leaked, and they eventually confirmed it was real, that basically said they have a new Claude called Claude Mythos, and they are not releasing it to the general public. One, because it's incredibly expensive to serve, and they think that they can bring that down before they serve it to people, which fine. Opus is already insanely expensive, so, you know, whatever. But like the more important thing is they are sort of following the responsibility or responsible disclosure kind of idea, where they basically believe that it is like 2x better. Not 2x better is not like actually what they're saying specifically. The rumors before this was released was like, there's a new frontier model that's 2x better than previous ones, but their implications for security for this model are kind of scary. And so they are doing a like thing that they're calling Project Glasswing, that basically involves coordinating with tons of open source projects, as well as like AWS, Apple, Broadcom, Google, CrowdStrike, Cisco, Microsoft, NVIDIA, JP Morgan Chase, like tons of stuff, to essentially use this on their systems to patch stuff before they release it to the public, because they are worried about the general availability of something that is this good at finding security vulnerabilities. They've published a link explaining a lot of this stuff, and it's very intense. During our testing, we found that Mythos Preview is capable of identifying and then exploiting 0 days in every major operating system and every major web browser when directed by a user to do so. The vulnerabilities it finds are often subtle or difficult to detect. Many of them are 10 or 20 years old. The oldest one they found was lurking in OpenBSD for 27 years. And they're also like, in one case, Mythos Preview wrote a web browser exploit that chained together 4 vulnerabilities, making a JIT heap spray that escaped the renderer and OS sandboxing. It attained local privilege escalation exploits on Linux. It autonomously wrote a remote code execution exploit on FreeBSD's NFS server that granted full root access to unauthenticated users by splitting a 20-gadget ROP chain over multiple packets. Now, if you don't know what those words mean, they mean like, oh my God, basically. Like this is like stuff, like no human is doing this kind of stuff. Like each one of those is like, if you went to one of the big browser exploit competition things they do, like you're bringing home a 6 or 7 figure bounty for like that kind of level of stuff. And they're also like having it determine stuff and then having it grade which ones are most important, and then having humans validate it before they send these projects upstream. So they're not like doing a thing where they're just spamming everyone with reports. But that also means that this is kind of like the lower bound of stuff that's going on. Like they sent in 114 0 days to Firefox, and all of them, 147 just to the JavaScript engine in Firefox. And they basically like, those were all real and all fixed. Like it's kind of that sort of level of thing. And so just like when you start thinking through the implications of like when you could just say like, please hack someone's computer, okay, thanks. Like that's a very different kind of like world that we're living in. And so I think that like, because this is like a preview that's gone out and it's coordinated amongst all these companies, like people have known. And I think that's why you're hearing security people say this is like the year of this kind of stuff, is because, you know, I've never been in the room where like a truly serious 0 day has been announced, but I used to work at Mozilla. And one time I was in a WebAssembly meeting, and someone brought up a certain kind of thing. And then somebody in the room was like, yeah, we can't use that. And I can't tell you why. And then like 3 days later was the like announcement of the, what was that super vulnerability that was the like switching where we had to like, Intel had to patch CPUs because of the
Spectre
like
meltdown?
Spectre and meltdown. Yeah. Where it was like, something's coming, but I can't tell you. And then that like happened pretty soon after. So, you know, this is going to be like a thing where like historically speaking, a lot of bugs were not exploitable, because who's going to split a 20 gadget ROP chain over multiple packets? Like that's not a thing that humans are really capable of doing. And so those bugs existing has not really been a like actual problem. But now we find ourselves in a world where all of our software possibly has vulnerabilities, and like and they're like trivially exploitable by a normal person maybe. And so like it's gonna be a really big deal for everything, honestly. There's also a Rust angle on this, but I've been talking for a long time already. They talk about how a lot of these are memory safety vulnerabilities because everything's written in C and C++, and like all the simple bugs have been patched already, so it finds harder ones because those are the only ones that are left because humans have done a pretty good job. But like it's looking kind of scary. And so yeah, anyway, that's what's going on with that.
It just kind of reminds me how we're really bad at predicting like what's going to be a problem in the future. Like people have been running around for years worrying about like what's going to happen when we have like quantum computers and how that's going to break all of security and all of that. And like I don't know if like 5 years ago anyone would have been like, oh yeah, we're gonna make these LLMs, these things that can like think and talk and really interesting, and they're maybe going to expose all of the vulnerabilities or a whole bunch of vulnerabilities in our software that we never knew were there and cause like a dramatic problem for probably the next year. This feels like another Spectre meltdown sort of situation where it's like, oh, everything is exposed. What are we going to do about all of this?
Yeah, like many security like responses and teams and stuff in smaller companies or open source projects are like 1 or 2 people. Like I used to be the person who triaged incoming reports for the Rust standard library. And like we got a lot of dumb, not real reports, but we also got some serious ones. But that happened like once a year. And so, you know, like when that starts being like, here's a couple hundred, you know, that the quantity just changes like what has to happen, as well as like, you know, like basically like this is a set of practices that have been set around certain kinds of like expectations, and those expectations are likely to be changing. And so like that's just something we're gonna have to figure out collectively.
Yeah, I feel like it's gonna be like another, and we've been through these types of like we need to rapidly figure stuff out before, so it's not like this is like brand new. I mentioned Spectre meltdown. I also think like getting the web to be HTTPS is another one of those things where it's like, oh yeah, we were just sending like passwords and like credit card numbers like in plain text over the internet, like terrible ideas for like a long time, and then we figured out, oh, this is very exploitable, we should not be doing this.
Back in my day, you used to be able to Google something that looked like a credit card number, and you'd find like foo.com/cards.csv that was just like a list of all the orders that people had like sent, you know, because people just wrote very bad web apps, and like I never did anything with that information.
Yeah,
I went, oh my God, this is real. Like, but like, you know, like we've gone a long way in security, but we do have like more things to, you know, to cover.
Yeah, it feels like we're going in many different directions too. Because I feel like this ties into the other thing that I kind of brought up earlier. I think we talked about on the podcast before, but like the idea that like we need to not adopt the newest thing that comes out because it might be vulnerable, and we should have like these cooldown periods, or like go extreme like Go did and basically like shackle people to older versions of stuff. But like that seems, given what you just said, to be like exponentially more bad now, given that like any old piece of software might just be like easily exploitable, and like the only way to fix that is by upgrading. So if you're like stuck 2 weeks behind on like everything that you're doing, that's a 2-week window where you can like get hacked because you're sitting on some old version of something.
Yeah, I think the specifics matter a lot here, because my gut reaction when people talked about cooldowns was like the same as you, which basically is like, well, no one's going to find this stuff out until it actually gets released anyway. And so you're just like delaying, you know, important stuff getting out. But the argument that I've heard that I'm sympathetic to, that's kind of the like reverse, is maybe a little long, but like the idea is basically like, give it a couple days for automated code scanners to look over things before it gets adoption, to then cut out like new vulnerabilities that have landed in the new versions of things. And it's more about like, not about changing like the version resolution semantics to be like Go's, where you get the minimum version instead of the maximum one, but it's more like when evaluating the maximum one, the server does not expose the literal latest version if it is under a week old, for example. And so like once that time passes, now you still move on to that new version, but it's kind of like more about what the server exposes to you as the latest being on a little bit of a delay. And I think I'm like more sympathetic to that style of this than I am the like, don't opt in to patch updates unless you expressly say so kind of model, for sure.
Right. Although I feel like any type of delay there, if there's like a 0 day, that that causes like there's that trade-off there, right? Like, oh, there's a 0 day in this, and now I have to wait a week before I get the patch for it. That's not a great position to be in.
Yeah. I'm also very curious, since this just got announced like literally as we were pulling up, like an hour before we started recording this, like OSS fuzz, like this reminds me when fuzzers got deployed initially, right? Like, so fuzzers, if anyone in the audience doesn't know, basically are tools that try to like put a bunch of random garbage into your program and see what comes out the other side. And so you can imagine like, this I think this makes the most intuitive sense with stuff like a JPEG file parser. You like give it what's basically a malformed JPEG and see if you get a vulnerability out the other side, because most of the time we're great at parsing the good stuff, but then we like miss, the bad stuff or whatever. And so by sort of running it against this kind of like thing, you can eventually produce things. And there's strategies to make it more than just random. And there's a whole bunch of stuff here. But the point is, when these tools first became available, people were very worried that it was going to have a similar effect to what we're talking about with Mythos, where, oh my God, now just we're going to get overwhelmed with reports and we're going to leak vulnerabilities that are going to make people vulnerable. But companies like Google stepped up and runs OSS Fuzz, which is a tool that basically looks at important enough by some metric open source tools and then runs fuzzing capabilities against them and then sends bug reports to the maintainers. And that's like a way to help use these tools for good and make sure that stuff, ends up being handled by the good guys instead of waiting until the bad guys find it. And so I can imagine a world in which Anthropic basically says like, we're committing to using a certain amount of compute to have automated vulnerability research on important enough things, and we'll see how that goes. I don't know if they're going to do that or not, but it would be nice to see. But also it feels like they're falling over because they got too much load and too many users and they don't know what to do. So like, I don't know how they're planning on their most expensive and heavyweight model yet, running that regularly on tons of projects. Like, feels like they don't have the capacity for that. So I don't know.
It feels like a Google or an AWS, like people who know how to do like the hyperscalers who already can run compute at humongous scales need to like help here, because Anthropic is still like a relatively small company compared to the other behemoths out there. But I think too, on like the problem I have with the cooldown period thing is that it's time based and not like, oh, we've run X number of checks, or we've done like, I feel like it should be some like, we have analyzed this code and now we have like this percentage confident that there like aren't new vulnerabilities in it. Like, that feels like something that would be beneficial. Like, it's kind of like when you have flaky test, instead of just putting a random timeout in there, you're like, okay, what's actually making it flaky, and then like fixing that flaky thing or restructuring it so that it like works better. So you get the right signal out the thing. Because I think sticking arbitrary times in things or like delays in things is like a quick fix in the immediate term, but it's like those have a habit of just like propagating and becoming like absurd, or like to having people have debates about like, how long should it be? Should it be a day? Should it be a week? Should it be a month? Should it be like, where do you settle? So I think like having a different heuristic there is like what we should be doing, and building into our tool chain so people can also do risk assessments on their own of like, oh, hey, there's a 0 day in the version of this I'm using. So that 0 day is worse than probably another potential vulnerability that might be in that code. So I'd rather get that code right now and get rid of the 0 day than sit on something that has a 0 day because maybe there's a vulnerability in the new thing, right? Like, people should be able to have that, assess that trade-off for themselves, instead of having to just be like, oh, we're just going to have some time-based thing.
Yeah. There's definitely sort of like you want to measure the thing that matters, and time is a secondary characteristic of the thing that matters, where it'd be nicer to measure the like direct characteristic, which is like, have you done certain amounts of review on this or whatever? Probably one of the things I describe as like one of the worst days of my life, which is maybe a little excessive, is about 10 years ago, I was on the Ruby on Rails team, and there was a very fun exploit that happened where you could get root on the box of any web server running Rails. And the fix, and for every version of Rails that had ever been released. This was around the Rails 3 days.
From an external,
and it was
from
like
external, right? Like an external user hitting over Rails.
Yes. So what happens is there's like a YAML serialization thing and an XML serialization thing. And if you like encoded your XML into YAML, and then that YAML represented Ruby code, you could basically inject arbitrary Ruby code into someone's application, because the deserialization process would like
eval it or something.
Eval the Ruby code. Yes. Yeah. And so the fix is really easy. Most people did not use the XML or YAML serialization, so you could just turn that off. And so it really meant like drop a config file into your Rails app and restart and you're okay. But like we basically like disclosed this. And I was at a conference when this happened. And like basically there was a big Hacker News story, and so everybody's on there, and I'm trying to like do basically public comms for this. And a bunch of people I was like sitting in a corner in the hallway track, and a bunch of people kept walking back and being like, "Hey, Steve," and everybody else is like, "Steve can't talk right now. Go look at Hacker News." And basically like people were giving me like root into their boxes and being like, "Please fix this for me." And so like I'm like, okay, and I was just like dropping the config files into their code base to like turn off the thing or whatever, because just like people were like, I don't know, and it was like a much older time, back then. So anyway, just like handling widespread security issues is just like always a nightmare, because you sort of you have to show off what happens in order to fix the thing that happens. And as soon as you know what the fix is, you can often reverse engineer what the problem is. And so there's just kind of inherently a race every time this stuff becomes public, because it's like, who can patch all their stuff before everybody else is able to exploit it? And that's just always, I think that feels like an inherent property of this class of problem, basically.
Yeah. We spent the 80s and 90s and 2000s writing an absurd amount of very vulnerable code that we still depend on. And it seems like we have to figure out a way to actually fix that problem. I don't know. Like now it feels like the idea of like rewrite everything and not C, I feel like is like, yeah, that's something we probably should have figured out, like how we were going to do or how we were going to fix the problems that are inherent with like C being of an era where security was not a thing that people really thought about. I guess like the 70s was not really a time when people were super worried about like the security of their programming languages or like even network security or anything like that. And it feels like we've needed to move beyond in a lot of ways from the hardware all the way up, and we just like haven't. And I'm hoping that maybe this set of circumstances will get us like moving in the right direction to like start companies like Apple have already done like a huge amount of work reimagining the security of the hardware, right? Like it's really hard to hack into like Apple hardware these days to actually like just get in there if you're not supposed to be in there. Especially like on their computers, right? Like I remember growing up, it's like trivially easy to get into like a machine. You're just like, oh, I have physical access. I have access to the thing. And like that's just like not true anymore for the most part for like the lay person when it comes, or even like the advanced nerd when it comes to Apple hardware. Like they're serious about like, yeah, you're not going to get in. We can't get in this thing. Nobody can get in this thing. You have to go like buy some hack from somebody that exploits something in order to get into this thing. And it feels like we need more advancements like that and more forward movement like that. And I also hope that this security scare will like prepare us for the next one, which really is like the post-quantum era.
We've talked about the that negative side of AI and security and all this stuff, but we are all using AI to some capacity to do good things and to like manage our work life and life better. And Steve, you were mentioning that you, I guess, updated the way your life harness of AI, I guess is what I'll call it.
Yeah, I haven't talked about this a lot publicly yet, but basically I have Claude playing like a assistant for me. So I gave it access to my calendar and a linear board and my email, although it cannot write emails, it can only read my emails. And basically am like going to inbox zero by tracking everything in linear now. And it's been 2 or 3 weeks of that, and it's kept me more on top of stuff. And it's nice to have also just like the check-in, like, when I'm trying to manage this myself, I can ignore the fact that I put something off yesterday, but it'll be like, hey, there was a ticket due yesterday. It is still marked to do. What's up with that? Oh, let's schedule a time block to do that on your calendar tomorrow. And it's like, there's a little bit of accountability that happens when you would like, have a real personal assistant that like has been useful for me as part of that kind of stuff.
So can you run us through like the workflow there? How do things work? Are you like MCPing everything together? Do you have a persistent Claude or something running 24/7? How do you manage state? Like I have obviously there's a lot of questions here.
I don't think that this setup is necessarily the best, but I'm trying to like begin small and kind of like build from there. Like I said, it's only a couple of weeks, but
I asked for more. I'm being a little selfish here why I'm asking, because I do want to start moving towards this little setup myself, especially with like, I will have some down, like baby's obviously almost here, but I will have some downtime before she gets here. And like, even when she's here, there'll be some level of downtime. I want to kind of do something like this for my life.
Yeah.
So I'm asking more selfishly, but also I'm sure our listeners and viewers are curious as well.
Totally. You can go super intense MCP stuff, but honestly, for this level of stuff, like Claude Cowork is totally fine. So essentially Claude Code has like connectors, which are sort of like MCPs, but they're implemented differently, or like some of them don't have the same capabilities as the real I don't know. Claude Cowork is clearly very vibe coded, just like Claude Code itself is, and so it's a little janky at times. But basically, like they have this connectors, and so it's essentially an MCP with just whatever they've decided is in there, and they've tweaked. I've had the Gmail connector be like, it says I have the archive email tool, but then I try to use it and it doesn't work, so they must have removed that. But like currently, as of right now, it basically has like read only Gmail access, and then I give it read-write to my calendar because it's only my own calendar. So whatever, if it messes it up, that's fine. And then read-write access to a personal linear board. And you could do all the normal, like ask me before doing stuff or just go ahead and do it. And basically like I have a skill that's like you could do like that's, I said, let's make a skill about checking my inbox and making sure it's tagged up on my linear board. And so I schedule that to run at 9 o'clock every morning. It gives me a little report of like, here's what's on your calendar today. Here's what's due on linear today. These are, what's going on. And then here's the untriaged emails in your inbox. Like, do you want me to, attach that response to the ticket that represents this email thread? Cause like linear lets you upload like stuff next to it. So I have like the links.
Which I love.
It's great.
Amazing.
So like so I can archive everything in Gmail because if I have like an open task in linear, it does a link to that email. And so I can like get it out of my like actual inbox and stay at true inbox 0 in Gmail while still having stuff as to do in linear. So it's just that. And then basically just like so it's like in the morning it'll sort of run that and then prompt me to do that, and it's a matter of just like checking in at least once a day. And then the other thing I started doing is I kind of made a let's time block my calendar for this week kind of thing. And so I told it some stuff about how my life works and how I want to do things. Yeah. And so I'm not like scheduling every minute like the people who really do intense time blocking stuff, but I have 3 conferences coming up in the next 2 weeks. And so I want to make sure that I schedule time to get those slides done. And so, I'm like, can you put time on my calendar? This conference wants slides by this date, this conference wants slides for that date. Can we make sure that I have like time scheduled to do that? And it's like, yeah, sure. And it just makes that happen. And so, for those kinds of like basic tasks. Now, a real actual human PA would be able to do things like respond to people via email and like do sort of management stuff like that. And I think that's like not currently appropriate as far as I'm concerned. So I don't do that kind of stuff. It's purely a read only and organize kind of thing. But, just like the classic, like GTD was always cool. But the problem is that you have to like do the work to perpetuate the GTD, which is like helpful because it makes you aware of it, but it's easy to get stuff out of sync. And so just like having essentially like a Claude runs that like does essentially the rough equivalent of GTD and then make sure the state is in sync, and then is just able to tell me like, I'm here's what's coming on and here's what's, up today and here's what's coming soon, is just like helpful to be like aware. And so I'm not necessarily like, totally on point with all of my tasks. But before this happened, I was very stressed out because I didn't know what I was behind on. I was like, I vaguely have all these obligations coming up, but I don't know what the situation is. And now I have like a very clear, like, okay, you were 2 days ahead on this thing, you're 1 day behind on that thing. And that's just been a good peace of mind thing in general.
So how's the new role? I know you're busy and obviously you can't spill any beans or anything, but
yeah.
You're not using GitHub. What are you using?
Stuff is good. So like so for those who don't know, I'm working at a company called East River Source Control, ERSC.io. We say ERSC, which is terrible, but we're actually gonna have a different name for the product. And so it's fine, like whatever. But basically like we're building like not crappy GitHub is the easiest way to think about it. But like the details matter a lot here. And so, I can't get too into it, but kind of like the point is roughly like, GitHub is showing its age in many, many ways, and Jujutsu is really cool, and stack diffs are really cool. And so kind of, I guess, like the way I would sort of pitch it is like, source control is changing, and what we need out of source control is changing. And regardless of your personal feelings about AI, like the trend is more software and faster. Like part of the reason why GitHub is having so much downtime lately is because people are just pushing way more stuff to GitHub than ever before, and that's a hard problem. So like, we kind of want to build a sort of software forge for 2026 instead of for 20 years ago, and so that naturally means learning from the past and doing some things differently, and so we'll eventually have something we can share with people, but we're still like kind of working on it, and so that's kind of the situation and why I'm off GitHub a little bit as much. I still have stuff on GitHub and I'm still keeping that stuff there and whatever else, but it's just kind of like dog fooding is good, so using your own product as much as possible is good. So in that sort of stage of things, but yeah.
I mean, obviously, you can only say what you can say for sure. Is the focus right now like source control? Like, are you? Yeah,
I mean, like, basically, like, there's normal Forge feature stuff too that matters, but like ultimately, if you look at what's happened. So okay, there's a couple of things. One is JJ has pluggable backends. So a really cool thing about it is that you can like write your own backend that does something differently than you might do for say Git or whatever else. And that's how Google uses JJ. So they have their own Piper version control system. And so JJ speaks directly to Piper instead of to Git directly. So there's kind of that sort of stuff. But basically like certain aspects, if you look at all of the FANG companies, like they basically don't use Git because Git fails at really large mono repos. And the reasons for that are complicated and Git's gotten a little better over time. But like ultimately, there's some stuff that I'm going to hand wave technically because it's not really that important right this second. But like basically just like Git does not work if you want to have a Google sized repository. And so you need to do something else. And so kind of like what we are doing is on one hand, a like Git compatible scalable server that you can push your code up to that handles this stuff, because again, like people are pushing more code than ever and our repositories are growing larger than ever. And another side effect of AI, I think, is that people want mono repos faster than they used to, because having all the context is important locally. And so you don't want like to have to pull down 17 different repos to do your job. You'd rather just have the mono repo stuff. And so I kind of thought about Oxide in many ways as like taking what the hyperscalers did and selling it to normal people. And so I think a good way to think about Ersk is like taking the monorepo sort of tech that the big companies have and then just selling it to people.
You can't just use that marketing
kind of thing.
Okay. How dare you?
I know, right? But that's like a consistency. Like that's why I got interested in this problem, is because like there is a similarity between, what I was doing and what I'm doing now. And that's important actually.
When you see companies working with the same tools you're working with, but then not using them the same way you're using them, that like that tool eventually doesn't scale, right? For whatever definition of scale you're looking at. And you're correct. Like the hyperscalers or the FANG companies, they're not using Git. They had whole teams, writing source control plugin software, whatever, to handle the scale of code that they're working with and the monorepo that they're working with. And what does that tell you? Like, it tells you that Git falls down at some place, and it's kind of nice to see that, because we can like, trash talk GitHub's uptime all we want, but totally there are graphs out there that show how much code is being pushed since AI, and like you said already, Steve, it's a hard problem. Like if I was dealing with the number of Git pushes that GitHub is dealing with per day, I wouldn't be able to handle it either. But there are things that are outside of source control storage that GitHub is kind of not the best at anymore, right? Even pull request reviews, it's very hard. Go open up a large pull request on GitHub and tell me how, and try to review it and tell me if you like that experience. You're not going to like that experience, right? And so like hearing what you all are doing at Ersk, which yes, definitely have a different name for the product. we love you. We're cheering for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Hopefully, like, as you find your primary product, you solve for these other things that are around GitHub that have gotten a little stale as well.
Yeah,
and I'm
absolutely.
really curious to see how that all plays together.
Why? Hopefully sometime soon. And we do like ingest Git repos also, to be clear. Like everyone uses Git right now, so you're trying to do a migration path, from Git, obviously. So that matters too. But just like it's not a Git server we're running somewhere and trying to scale it up. Like we have our own server, sort of VCS backend, basically. So why
is it important then? like, why would you want to write your own storage backend or have JJ talk to your storage backend? Like, what are you gaining really over just the Git backend?
So I mean, like, just that it works at all is like sort of it, but like, you're looking at big companies that measure the changes to their repo in commits per second, like on trunk. Like, and so like when you need to handle that kind of scale, you like need to be able to do that efficiently. And so you can't just like take Git web and give it a big server and be like, please respond to requests. Like, you just need to write your own software that is able to handle that kind of stuff at that kind of scale, basically. And so that's just really sort of what it boils down to, is like, there isn't an open source project that you can just install that's like a source code server that can handle this stuff at this size. It just doesn't exist. And so you have to sort of write your own at some point, and that's just like what it is.
And also with like mono repos, at some point you might not want to download the entire thing. So you have to figure out how do I only get part of this thing and then also get the things when I need the other parts of this. Like, it's like a whole...
When you're talking about like a working copy that is no history, just like the current changes in the terabytes, like you want things like, so again, how these fan companies work is like, you start working on something, you tell it the chunk of the code base you want to work on, it gives you a dev box, and the dev box has just the chunk of the mono repo that you care about checked out into your thing. And then you work on it and you submit it upstream. But like, you just can't, you like literally cannot do the naive, like, get the whole working copy for the entire repo all at once. And it's called sparse checkouts, and Git does support this to some degree, like, but whatever. It's like, the point is that like, there's aspects of this workflow when you start thinking about huge repos that just like fundamentally change the way that you like need things to work. And so that's all the people that have done that are not selling that technology because or like something like Perforce is known for, being able to handle these kinds of things, for example, in some ways. And so they're either proprietary or just, not sellable. Like, you can't get Google's Piper unless you're at Google. So just like there's room in the market for, I want this stuff, but I also don't want to like have a platform team reinventing it from scratch for me.
Are you, again, please tell me you can't answer it or whatever. Yeah, obviously. Is the idea SaaS? Are you trying to get people to install this on-prem at some point? Like, what are you sort of looking at from that perspective?
Yeah, I think I don't want to talk about that just yet, but like, you were right that there is lots of stuff in that space that really matters, basically. Like, and those choices are important. So yeah, totally.
I only asked.
Oh, no, I don't mind being asked questions. Yeah, totally, absolutely. It's the first time we really talked about it. So like, yeah,
because I see GitHub, and I think part of its struggle is that it's a single centralized SaaS product. And like, you have so many people pointing to the same, obviously GitHub's not one server running somewhere, obviously, but like, if people were running their own stuff on-prem, and I know GitHub has GitHub Enterprise, like if it was more decentralized in that nature, we probably wouldn't be seeing the level of performance issues we are. And with this whole push to like, sovereign cloud and on-premises stuff, I can see that being a very important, especially with AI, right? Like AI having something that's running close to where your AI is running would be really, really nice. So I'm
also
excited to see what y'all are gonna do.
Also, some people are just like, the source code is the most important part of the thing that we're doing, and I don't want to send it to your server. Like, and that is a very reasonable, and that's why GitHub Enterprise exists as it is. But like, that is a core constraint that a lot of companies have as well. So totally, like,
no, for sure. I mean,
there's a lot of stuff that like, when your business is not version control and you just like mostly push up little repos to GitHub, and then people are like, Linux is on GitHub, it's a big repo, and it's like, if you think Linux is a big repo, then you're not like in the category of people that we're like talking about, which is fine. But like, just
also Linux is like open by nature versus some companies' proprietary code that they don't want to be out there. Yeah, it's. People have such weird like thoughts about these things. It's like, you don't really know what scale is, do you? Like, you still think 1 gigabyte is big, do you? Like, we're beyond that stuff.
I think too, there's a aspect of this where like, Git was never really designed to be used like this. Like, mono repo was
for
not
anyone.
Like a...
It was supposed to be used for the Linux kernel, and that's it. And then like, oops, we'd made other things happen, right?
Yeah, it's like, okay, yeah, and it's like the whole, even like the way to use Git, I think best is probably the way the Linux kernel does use it, where it's like, you got a mailing list, you're moving patches around, you're merging things, you like maintain your own local thing, and then you kind of add to it via the patch system. not like this idea of like there's a central thing that you're then putting everything into. It's like it's not really, I think, the way it was designed to be used, even though they've made it so you can use it that way. So I think there is a lot of benefit to like building something from whole cloth that is meant to be used in this way.
Yeah. Like the Linux kernel development is federated, and it also does not use pull requests as traditionally thought of. Like what they call pull requests is not what GitHub calls pull requests. And so both of those things are ways in which we all collectively kind of like did a different thing, and it's arguably bad at it because that's not what it was designed for.
Yeah.
What do you call GitHub? What do you call pull requests? Do you have a name for it internally?
There's not even a separate concept of pull request, actually. So the way that these things, stack diffs operates on like changes themselves. So you think about each JJ change, like there's no inherent, like there's not a separate idea between a change that's a head of trunk and a like pull request, because it's like just a valid change that you could pull into trunk. So like you don't like need a separate, like kind of like changes have states, and one of those is landed and one of those is not landed. And so any non-landed change that's a head of trunk is like viable to be, you know, reviewed and possibly merged in. And so like there's not really, I think like change request is kind of like a name that we talk about using in this sense. And like Garrett calls them CRs, change requests, and Fabricator calls them whatever. But like in the stack diffs world, you kind of like don't even really necessarily have a separate concept for this thing, because it's just here's some patches, feel free to integrate them if you'd like, and making those discoverable and blah 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 and everything else. But yeah, like
does walking away from, sorry Chris, do you want to go or
you can go.
Okay. Does walking away from the Git storage backend kind of like also walk you away from having to use bookmarks as branches in that regard then? Like, yeah. Okay, cool. Cause obviously when you're using JJ with like Git and GitHub, you're going to be like, oh, your bookmarks are now branches, and like, you know, your changes are like, you know, the working copy is over here and blah, blah, blah. Work trees are workspaces. You give the analogies of what terms map.
Yeah.
But like, I don't care about bookmarks. Like, I don't care about bookmarks actually at all. You know, I when I'm doing my JJ workflow to do a pull request in GitHub, I'm just JJ, you know, git push dash change at minus or whatever, right? Like just push this change up and like generate a bookmark, and I don't really care. But the point
this is because Git garbage
yeah.
collects commits that are not reachable through some sort of branch name, basically.
Right.
And
Gotcha.
so when you're not dealing with Git anymore, you can now make it so that anonymous changes are totally fine to not be garbage collected. And the way that JJ does it with Git repos is they like basically make like a synthetic kind of like thing that's in the repo that keeps it alive so it doesn't get GC'd. But like, yes, that is like the core part of the core thing, is that you don't have to follow those semantics anymore because it's not a big deal. So,
which I love, because you have in that workflow, and sorry, Chris, I'll give it right back to you. In that workflow, you have like a few names for things, and names that I don't even care about. All I care about is the description of my change and the body underneath it. Right? Like that's what I'm going to tell you as a reviewer, like what's happening here. I don't care about the commit ID. I don't care about the change set ID. I don't care about the bookmark name. I don't care about any of that stuff, because half of that's internal to whatever source control you're using, and the other half is just a relic to make it map to a branch. And I don't care about that either. And I'm just curious to see how all this works eventually when you all reveal to the public, because there'll be such a nice change of pace. And I know there's gonna be so many developers out there that need to be taught. You have to unlearn some stuff.
Talk to the Oxide folks about Garrett. Like, Oxide folks use Garrett. Garrett has a very similar kinds of things to this, where basically you just like, you push up a patch and then it's draft. And then when you click it to be published, it's like, okay, now that's on a page of like, here's all the things that people are asking to integrate. And, you know, that's like totally separate from blah, 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 blah. So it's like a lot of this is stuff we're doing and we have our own take on it, but it's also, you know, well-trod things that other systems have proven out here as well, you know? And so you can like that, and those systems are just nicer to work with in the end, basically. So, but GitHub is also going to eventually have stack diffs, they say. So we'll see how that comes when that happens. And I'm hoping that helps the developer education aspect of this, because like, you know, and that's why it's like, if we were the stack diffs company, we'd be like, oh no, GitHub's adding stack diffs, but it's like more than that. So, you know, totally. Like it's actually just helpful when you're, you know, when the big company is like, let me introduce this concept to people, because then they, you know, learn what it's like. And even if it's not the same exact thing, they at least have some amount of familiarity. So that's helpful.
So like stack diffs are like in Garrett, when you just like have multiple like patches that are relating to each other, right?
I think they call it a patch set. It's like,
Yeah.
here's the chain of required so you can't land patch 5 until patch 4 is landed.
Yeah.
You can't land patch. Yes.
Okay,
That's
okay.
like, that's the stack of, and they're just diffs patches, whatever you want to call them. But
Yeah.
people seem to land on stack diffs as the name for this as a general concept. But all of these systems work in that kind of way. Yeah.
Well, I think that's a good place to call it. I know, it's officially my last day of Oxide for now. Steve, you're busy. Kris, you're busy, But it's always a pleasure to talk to you all. And I hope by the time I get back from leave, listener, viewer, Steve promised me a demo when I come back from leave. I don't know what's happening. I don't know how. I don't know how that happened, but I don't know. I think we're going to get a demo. No, I'm just kidding. He didn't promise.
You've got to birth a baby. I've got to birth some software. It's totally the same thing.
Well, he doesn't have to birth a baby.
I know. Yeah.
He just has to take care of the baby once it's birthed.
Yes. But no, I'm really excited to see what you're all about. I'm like, obviously I miss you at Oxide, but I'm very glad that you went on to work on this, because I think it's needed. Like, forget about GitHub and the reliability stuff and everyone that's kind of, doing on social media. The paradigm is shifting and the tools have to shift with the paradigm. And I'm glad that someone is tackling, someone being a company, like a company is tackling this in the version control side.
Yeah.
And
yeah, totally.
You should definitely, listener, viewer, if you haven't used Jujutsu, I can only really say it.
I just say JJ. I kind of am on team, like, it's just called JJ and like whatever.
Yeah. Drop the from the Facebook, okay? It's just
exactly.
Facebook.
Right.
If you haven't tried JJ, you should definitely give it a go. And you can totally use it with your normal Git workflows today. I haven't touched Git in a year.
Nobody needs to know. You just work locally and it's fine.
Yep, nobody needs to know. And now they have tags setting. You can actually set tags in JJ.
Yeah.
You can't push them yet, but you can set them at least, which is good.
Mm-hmm.
So we're once you're able to push tags with JJ, boom, never have to use Git ever again in my life.
Man, it's on my list of things to adopt. I have new shell now. I'm trying to start using ZMX. I'm like upgrading my NeoVim, just new tools as I'm going along. JJ is on the list.
It'll only get better over time. So whatever, the way that I think about it is same thing I say about Rust, if you would just wait, it'll end up getting better. And sure, nobody has time to try every new cool thing. So it's all good.
Yeah. Right.
Totally. Yeah. If you don't have time, you don't have time. I just, when you have time, I encourage you, Kris, and you listener, when you have time, definitely give it a go. It's interesting. It's fun.
Yeah. I'm discovering the marvels of modern CSS right now. So yeah, it's not.
I thought CSS was dead. Didn't someone just kill it with whatever else the other day?
I feel like
wasn't
CSS
that text wrapping thing
slayed everything else. I mean, we got nesting now. We got variables. There's so much cool stuff in CSS. We got functions.
That was just text layout was what that was. I don't think. That
Oh,
was
right. It was
CSS.
wrapping text layout sort of deal without having to use. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's not dead, is what you're telling me.
CSS is not dead. The Cascade is alive and extremely powerful.
I don't know about that, but CSS is alive. I don't know. I'm an all Tailwind all the time kind of guy these days. So I try to avoid the Cascade as much as possible. But that's whole.
I love embracing the Cascade. It sounds like we have another episode to do, Steve, talking about CSS. I mean, I'm for people using Tailwind. I think you can also compile your Tailwind into just regular CSS style.
I don't know, man. I just bang import and everything, and I don't care.
That's one way to do things, Matt. That's one thing to do things.
If everything's important, nothing's important, right? I don't know. Whatever. No, don't ask me to write CSS. I'm not good at that.
Yeah, I'm trying to get good at it. It's tough. It's a whole different world. It's a whole different world. But with that, I think we gotta wrap this episode up. Steve's got work to do. I've got food to eat. Matt's got a baby to wait for. Any time now. But yeah, viewer/listener, how'd you like that episode? We hit on a few fun topics, I think. Some security stuff. We talked about version control systems, a little bit all over the place, but all related. I think we're talking about how we all need to move forward as a society. and embrace the change that is coming. But what do you think? Let us know in Change.Zulip, Go for Slack, on social media, or anywhere you find your lovely Fall Through host or co-host. This episode of Fall Through was hosted by Kris Brando with co-hosts Matthew Sanabri and Steve Klopnick. Fall Through is produced by Kris Brando, and our beats are by Breakmaster Cylinder. Hooray!